You've seen the pictures, right? You're scrolling through your feed, and there it is. The perfect shot of a family, kids smiling, learning about history not from a dusty textbook, but right at the foot of some ancient ruin. That's the dream of world schooling. It's the ultimate hashtag travel family lifestyle. But behind those stunning photos, there's a much more complicated reality. So let's pull back the curtain on this whole picture-perfect world. And this dream is absolutely huge. I mean, just look at the numbers. The hashtag travel family tag on Instagram, over 1.3 million posts. And hashtag world schooling itself has more than 350,000. So yeah, this is not some niche little idea anymore. It's a massive movement of people who are searching for a totally different way to live and learn. But of course, the filtered photos don't tell the whole story. As The Guardian points out, this adventure can unravel and fast. People talk about this intense loneliness, a constant feeling of not having a community, and some really significant mental health challenges. It is definitely not always paradise. What's really fascinating, though, is that the biggest challenge usually isn't navigating a foreign country or dealing with all the visa paperwork. Nope, it's a hidden hurdle that almost nobody talks about when they're planning the big adventure. That's right, the most difficult, the most disorienting, and honestly, the most emotionally complicated part of the entire world schooling journey is often that moment you step back into your own home country. It's called repatriation. So in this explainer, we're going to go on the full journey. We'll kick things off with the dream versus the reality. Then we'll dive into the practical playbook for making it all work. After that, we'll tackle that unexpected return. And we'll wrap up with a solid, concrete strategy for what I call your soft landing. Okay, first up, the dream and the reality. Let's get a really clear understanding of what this lifestyle actually looks like day to day. So at its heart, world schooling is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's this idea that the world itself is the best possible classroom. So instead of learning about geography from a map, you learn it by actually crossing borders. History isn't in a book, it's at a memorial site. In culture, you learn that by trying to order food in a local market. But this dream, it comes with some very real pressures. Check this out. One survey found that nearly 2 out of every 5 digital nomads, that's 38%, struggle with their mental health. Now imagine adding the responsibility of not just being a parent, but also being your kid's full-time teacher on the road. You can see how that stress just multiplies. So, knowing all the challenges, how do families actually pull this off? Let's get into the practical, step-by-step playbook. Okay, for all you planners out there, this slide is absolutely key. This right here maps out the biggest strategic decision every world schooling family has to make. There are basically 4 main models to choose from. First, you've got unschooling. It's totally experience-based, child-led, and gives you maximum flexibility. Then there's online learning, which uses structured, accredited virtual schools. That one makes it way easier to re-enter a traditional school system later. Third is classic homeschooling, parent-led, using curriculum kits, giving you total control. And finally, you can do short-term stints in international schools, which is awesome for socialization and transferring credits. The right choice here is all about figuring out your family's long-term goals. For strategists, settlers, and listen, here's the thing. Just by understanding these 4 models, you've already moved past the daydreaming phase. You are no longer just a dreamer. You're actually an architect, someone who can build a real plan. That puts you way ahead of the curve. Now for some of those non-obvious tricks that seasoned nomads swear by. First, the fake wallet. Carry a decoy with some expired cards and a little bit of cash to hand over if you get into a bad situation. Second, your digital life needs to be a fortress. I'm talking VPN, a password vault, and encrypting everything. And third, set up supply caches. Have a trusted friend back home who can mail you essentials that you just can't find abroad. Little things that make a huge difference for explorers. But the most important tool isn't a physical one. If you ask families why they quit this lifestyle, the #1 reason you'll hear is isolation. Finding a community isn't just a nice to have, it's an absolute survival requirement for you and for your kids. So where do you find your people? Well, you can tap into these massive Facebook groups like World Schoolers. You can use directories like World Schooly to find cities that are known as hubs for nomadic families. And if you want something a bit more structured, you can join a World School pop-up hub, which actually organizes community events for you. For social smarts. All right, so let's say you figured out the logistics, you've built a community, you're doing it. But now we get to the biggest surprise of the entire journey, the completely unexpected difficulty of coming home. This whole phenomenon has a name. It's called reverse culture shock. And research shows it hits about 70% of people who return from long trips abroad. And here's the real kicker. Many people report that it's actually worse than the culture shock they felt when they first moved to a foreign country. Why? Because it's completely unexpected. No one prepares you for it. And this is a brilliant illustration of the emotional roller coaster you can pretty much expect. It follows a predictable 5-stage pattern. First, there's euphoria. You're so excited to be back, see friends, eat all the food you missed. Then, dampened euphoria hits. You realize your old life feels kind of routine, and nobody really wants to hear your stories. This leads to stage 3, nostalgia and longing for your life on the road. But then, you move into gradual readjustment, and finally integration, where you figure out your new global identity. Just knowing these stages exist is a huge part of navigating them. And for kids, especially what they call third culture kids, this whole thing is even more intense. See, they look like everyone else, but they feel like total outsiders. They've missed out on years of absorbing all the unwritten social rules, the slang, the pop culture jokes, so they often feel like hidden immigrants in the one place that was supposed to feel like home. So how on earth do you manage this incredibly difficult transition? Well, that brings us to our final payoff, your 3-step plan for a soft landing. Okay, here it is, a simple 3-step strategy to manage the return. First, create a 2-day buffer. Seriously, don't announce your exact arrival date. Give your family a solid 48 hours to just decompress without the pressure of a million social visits. Second, immediately find your safe haven. That means connecting with 1 or 2 friends who've also lived abroad. Trust me, they'll be your emotional lifeline. And third, and this might sound a little weird, act like a tourist in your own town. It reframes the return as a new adventure, not the end of one. And that brings us to the crucial point. Coming home successfully isn't about closing a chapter. It's about learning how to integrate the new person you've become into a stable framework. You're not going back to who you were. You're moving forward as someone new, someone bigger. This all raises a really fascinating question, though. If full-time nomadism and that difficult return are the 2 extremes, then what does the future of this lifestyle look like? What's the more sustainable, long-term model? Well, for a growing number of families, the answer is in these new models, like micro-nomadism and adopting a sovereign expat mindset. It's all about blending the stability of a home base with shorter, more intentional bursts of travel. Creating a life that gives you the best of both worlds. And that strategy, well, that's a topic for a whole other explainer.
If this touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share it with your family. Save this for more meaningful content ahead.